everybody, it is Calxiyn and Hunter here, and I am happy to report that we have finally cracked what the Realm in RWBY Volume 9 is. So I hope that you guys enjoy it, because this is going to be wild. This is going to be crazy. If I am right, this is going to be like my magnum opus. Like, this is my like PhD deserving like dissertation, okay? This is
on par with figuring out Jin.
Exactly. Like, this is more than that. This is like everything. So there was a RWBY AMA the other day on Reddit, and that got me thinking, and I don't think that the Realm is the Afterlife anymore. Like, if it is the Afterlife, I still win, because we made that video. We worked hard on that video. Like, we can win. But I just don't think it's right. Like, even though that I liked it, I don't think it's right. And
I like how we just released a bunch of videos about what the Afterlife is like, and like, no, get rid of it, burn it.
Exactly.
It's last season's clothing.
Instead, exactly. And so, like, Eddie said in the AMA that we'll see more of the girl who fell through the world and like more fairy tales in the future, and that this volume is going to be trippy, and all of those things don't like give us anything on its own, but that's what like it just hit me like lightning reading that sentence, what the world is. So let's explain, okay? In RWBY Volume 8, when Ambrosius is like, hey, like, what do you guys want to do or whatever with the central location, Yang says, here, a place like these vaults, wherever they are, they're not part of Remnant, only accessible if you know the right way in. And so when you think about it, that doesn't really fit with the Afterlife, because you don't need to know the right way in to go to the Afterlife. You can just fucking die. Like, the Afterlife is accessible to everyone but Salem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't fit in with Yang's requirements, because you don't need to know the way in. So that would imply it's not the Afterlife, because anyone alive can go to the Afterlife. But that means that it has to be somewhere that you can't go just by living or dying. You have to have like a key. And so if it's not the Afterlife, what is it? And this is where I got thinking, right? We don't know if Ozpin made the vaults, but let's just say that he did for this theory, right?
Sure.
Let's say that he did. The vaults only exist in the way that they do because of Ozpin's creation magic. Like, he made these vaults to be unlocked by the maiden specifically. And I'm like, what is the crux of creation? It's his imagination, right? This came from Ozpin's invention. It's something that Ozpin created. So when Yang says a place like these vaults, could it be vague enough that Ambrosius took that as something else that Ozpin created or like invented? And so that means, like, if the vaults are from Ozpin's imagination, right? Like, it could be applied that this realm is also from Ozpin's imagination. And that's also the other thing, right? Like, Yang says they're not on Remnant. The vaults don't exist in Remnant's reality. They must be manifested back into existence by someone with Ozpin's magic.
And that's why the maidens who have Ozpin's powers are able to open the doors and nobody else.
Exactly.
Oh.
And so here's what I'm thinking.
You might be onto something there.
They exist in unreality. And what is unreality? A world of fiction, not Remnant, but the opposite of reality is the fictional world. So the realm isn't the Afterlife. Instead, it's the realm of fantasy. It's the world where all of the fairy tales in the book, in the fairy tales in the series, actually exist. And I know that sounds like a stretch. Like, how do we get from Ozpin all the way to a world of fiction? But here's what I'm saying, right? Think about this. Why do the fairy tale series now? Why have this lead up to Volume 9? Like, why is there a giant tree on the cover of the book, just like the tree in the realm? If the vaults were created by Ozpin, like if Ambrosius kind of wanted to be fucky, what if this realm of fantasy was also like one of Ozpin's creations? Because Ozpin penned the fairy tale book. He made the fairy tale book. What if he made the world of fairy tales like either unintentionally or like
that's
intentionally?
What I'm getting at, like,
you know what I mean? Because he, like, all of the people in pre-snap Remnant have like magic and stuff, and like you may think like, oh, but that's not enough to make like an entire world. But like, what if it is though? And what if it's kind of like this Ambrosius, like, be careful what you wish for type of situation? And that could be why, like, this is basically what I'm getting at, is that whether it was intentional or unintentional, right, this is one of Ozpin's creations. And so if you want a place that doesn't exist in Remnant that is similar to something like the vaults, it could have basically like manifested in this way. And so that would mean we're gonna meet all of the fairy tales characters. Like, they're all real and they're all in here. And this is why I think that Ozpin made it intentionally. Think about the relic of choice. It's the only one in the fairy tale book. And so that means that why it's hidden like in this secret way where Salem cannot find it, it's because it's not on Remnant. It's in the world of fiction. Like, it's in the world of the fairy tales. And that's why I think that this makes so much sense, because like combined together, right? Exactly. And so why do the fairy tale series now? Why do it when it's leading up to volume 9? Why have the tree? Why have only the crown featured in the fairy tale book, right? Why have an island that reminds us of the shallow sea? It's because all of the fairy tales have manifested and sort of culminated, like they're all like in this weird like melting pot where they all exist concurrently and they all exist together. And I think that that's really cool. And so when Eddie said that we'll see more of the girl that fell through the world, we just thought that she would be the Summer Maiden. But what if the reason that we'll see more of her is because she's a fairy tale character? And so, like, by proxy of her being a fairy tale character, anything that has been made, like, in Remnant and that Ozpin, like, knows as a fairy tale would exist in this world. And so that would include the girl that fell through the world that he told Oscar about.
And she would be able to kind of, like, hey, I know what's happening to you guys.
Because
this
he made a story. Like, he kind of made a story that would imply that she would have the knowledge. So, could she be a girl that literally, like, was put into the world, like, you know, from Remnant? She could have been Remnant born, but what if she was created for the express purpose,
I wonder if she knew Ozpin in some capacity and was accidentally or maybe purposefully yeeted into
the book, right?
By Ozpin.
So it could be either way. This is something else that I think would be crazy. What if they find out that they're all not real? Because that would fuck with someone, right? If you're just kind of like the
imagine being fictional in the fictional universe of RWBY.
And that's why it's trippy.
Fictional.
Exactly. And so, like, you know, at the beginning of the book, he says something very interesting. He says, they give us solace when we need it, advice if we seek it, and they are the connections that bind us. If you don't believe in stories, if you can't accept their truths, then you will always seek and never find. So I wonder if he made this realm as some sort of like therapy for him, or some sort of like, almost like a little ant farm, so he could see how certain scenarios would like play out and like, you know, kind of go in there and take on those lessons like for himself. Like almost like a live storybook that he could like go into, almost like a video game, almost like a live storybook he could go into and kind of watch over things and see how the humans act. That could have helped him, I guess, make decisions, or like, this is how humans kind of act in like these particular like bubbles, so I can take these lessons for myself. And so I think that that's really interesting. And something else that I was thinking about, who is also a fairy tale character, Salem. Which means that we're going to get a Salem replica of before. Like, she's not going to be the real Salem, but she's going to be a Salem replica. Because it would be the Salem before she went off with... It would be the fiction Salem. And this is where things get kind of like Kingdom Hearts and fucky.
Yeah.
But like, it's the Salem replica.
Because there's two Salem. But what if it's not quite Salem?
It's not quite Salem. It's the it's the people's imagination of Salem.
It's like Ozpin's imagination of Salem. That's kind of cool,
also why I think Ozpin made it, because he gives Salem a happy ending. So in this alternate reality, she has a happy ending.
It's a version of Salem who's like...
Come back into the light, Hunter. You're so surprised you're disappearing out of the video.
Well, no, it's just that... It's like, that's interesting, because it's like, because we talk about sometimes, this is weird, but sometimes when you like a person, or you're romantically invested in a person, or you're infatuated with a person, you're not infatuated with how that person actually is, but rather Europe's abstract concept of that person that you created.
That could be what Salem is.
So this, like, double Salem, nice Salem.
And then what if the team sees her too, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if Jean sees her?
They're about to throw hands, and they're like, no, she's chill. Because
they saw her in the Lost Fables, so they know that would be what she looks like.
Oh, that would be so fucked up.
And I was thinking, what if, like, that's the reason? Like, that's the thing that the king saw that freaked him out, is that they're all fictional. And, like, whatever drama Team RWBY brings, he has to make that choice. And I think there would be interesting things you could do with this. Like, what if you bring replica Salem back into the real world, or all the fairy tale characters from the real world, and then they come help as, like, a weird little army against, like, Salem, or they kind of, like, rebel. Like, maybe Team RWBY is like, but you guys can come help us, and they're like... No.
Why do I feel like New Salem would kick old Salem's ass?
I think bringing at least New Salem would be very fascinating. I think that would be kind of funny. Like, I guess, replica Salem,
it would be interesting if, like, the real people can exist in the fairy tale world, but the fairy tale people can't exist outside.
That'd be a little sad. But this also, I should say, like, we were sort of thinking that it was the afterlife because Neo fell. Why would Neo fall? To see Roman, obviously. But, right, in this context...
Why did the chicken cross the road? Why did Neo fall?
Exactly. But, in this context, context, Neo loves fairy tales, and so imagine her seeing the fairy tales and the state that they're in. Because, you know, the advice if you seek it thing, like maybe that's what'll make her turn code instead. Like, because I'm sort of having this idea that the fairy tales would kind of go on concurrently, but they would also go past where they ended, right? They would continue to go on. So what if she sees, I don't know, like what if she sees like Salem's life or something, and like in this version of the world, after Ozma dies, Salem lives on. And so she sees that the girl in the tower who she empathized with and loved so much actually moved on in this version from like her lost love. Like that could almost convince her. And I think because Neo's semblance revolves around imagination, like this concept is like super interesting to me. But what if like Story Salem convinces her that she can't live just for Roman? Like what if Neo is like, bro, where's your man? Right? Where's your happily ever after? And Salem is like, well, you know, it became more bittersweet than that because in this world, Ozma would still die, but she wouldn't go to the gods because there are no gods.
Well, did Ozma die in the story?
Well, no, I'm just saying, like,
so wouldn't that mean that there's two Ozmas
would move
as well?
on. Like, the fairy tales would continue to move on, like, with time was sort of my idea, is that they would kind of, like, you would see almost everyone after their stories, or maybe some people during their stories.
But, like what if the version of Salem is, like, kind of the idealized, happier version,
it could be that, too. Like, Ozma's alive, right? You could do that as well.
But it wouldn't be Ozpin. He would be a lot younger, and he'd be talented, but he would be a totally different person.
But that's why I'm sort of thinking, like, I like the idea that the fairy tales still progressed past their ending, because that's something that Ozpin says at the end of the fairy tale book. It's like not a happily ever after, but to live.
The king and the lady are happily married.
Yeah, like maybe we see like that time of things. And like the only question that people would have would be like, okay, well, why didn't Jin bring this up as something Ozpin was hiding? And I would say it's because he's not really hiding it. Like he's always emphasized the importance of the fairy tales. He says in the book that he's been collecting the fairy tales and going around Remnant, and he gave it to the students. Like it's no secret. I know we didn't see that in the show, so some people may think that this kind of comes out of like left field, but I feel like that like it's not a secret, and so it doesn't count.
I feel like if you did not read the book or watch the RWBY fairy tale,
this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be weird.
It would be really fucking confusing.
Yeah, you see Salem as one of the first people people would start to understand.
And because Salem and that fairy tale has in the show RWBY proper. Yeah. Kira mentions it in volume 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, if you have Alex, you could explain how she fell through the world.
Exactly. Like she could be the exposition.
Be that trippy.
And like the other thing I'm thinking is that maybe this isn't even just Ozma's creational, or I guess Ozpin's creation alone. Like maybe this is sort of like the public consciousness of the people of Remnant. Like I know that that's sort of trippy, but like what if it's like not just like Ozpin exclusive, but it's kind of like Persona, like Mementos, right? But instead it's like this why are you looking at me like that, Hunter? What are you thinking?
Do you remember when we talked about how because RWBY exists in the Stephen King movie Dr. Sleep? And that we thought, what if the Brothers Light and Brother Dark are just the monster from It and the giant godlike turtle?
It does.
But if all of the universe fiction exists, then that's what's like in Stephen King.
This is the world of fiction.
Yeah, that's what Stephen King wrote a series of books called The Dark Tower, in which
all
of the world's fiction exists.
Everything falls into place right now, right? Where's the relic of choice? It's in the fairy tale book, so it's in the fairy tale world. That's why nobody can find it, right? Like all of this stuff about Alex. Why will we see Alex again? She's a fairy tale character. And this world is gonna be the world of fairy tales and the world of fiction, right? And like, it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, this is kind of beyond our comprehension. It's a little bit confusing. Kingdom Hearts has a world of fiction, which is where this idea kind of came from for me. Because Kingdom Hearts has this thing where there's another side to reality, like the unreality thing. And the world of fiction is basically like the fictional characters like that exists like in the like there's a video game and one of the characters is from the video game that's inside of Kingdom Hearts. And so I feel like that like this is kind of like
it's all very meta.
Exactly. It's all very meta. And that could be why they were saying it was so trippy. That could be why they had to adapt the fairy tales now, because this is the lead up to volume 9 is this fairy tale dimension, right? It makes sense!
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't 100% on board with you, but post this conversation, you might be on
something. It was really The Crown for me. Like, thinking about where The Crown was all this time, that's what really solidified
and the fact that they couldn't find it there in Vale.
And that it was hidden in some kind of, like, secret place. And I can't wait. Like, I am so excited because I think that this is it. I genuinely think that we have cracked it, and this is what
After
Volume 9 is gonna be.
After like a year and like 6 to 8 videos on this topic.
We were so hooked on the Afterlife. We didn't see what was in front of us, okay? It's the world of fiction. It's the opposite to Remnant's reality. This is it. This is what Volume 9 is. It's going to be the world of fiction. That is what we are calling it now. It is Fairytale Island, bitch. And that means there's the chill, there's the indecisive king, there's the god of like the animals. We're going for it. We're going for it. So I'm really happy. I hope that you guys enjoyed.
I'm very excited about this.
Thank you for attending Calxiyn's Royal Court. Let us know what you think and we will see you later. Bye.